When Melanie got pregnant, everything was normal until labor started. Melanie died with her baby inside, and what her husband did next is unbelievable. Stepping into the hospital room where his wife Lee, Doug took in the scene before him. The last 48 hours had been a complete nightmare. What was supposed to be a happy event had turned into a tragedy that he could not comprehend. For the second time over the last few days, Doug was about to do something unbelievable. Melanie and Pritchard were like any other couple wishing to have a child. They'd spent many happy years together and already had a son, Brady, whom they loved very much. Life as a family of 3 was wonderful, but they always knew they wanted to expand their family. After a few years of making memories with Brady, they decided the time was right to try for another baby. They were a cautious couple. There had been a couple of minor bumps in the road when Melanie was pregnant with Brady, so they were keen to see that this pregnancy went as smoothly as possible. When the couple finally learned that they were pregnant, they began the search for the best doctor who would fight for both the mother and the baby's lives if it was needed. Little did they know this was the most important decision they would make during the pregnancy. Fortunately, Melanie's pregnancy progressed much more smoothly than the first one. With each week that passed, the couple's excitement grew. Brady had also learned he would be a big brother and couldn't wait to meet his sibling. At 39 weeks, Melanie began to experience mild contractions. The couple weren't worried, though, safe in the knowledge that everything had gone well up to this point. When the contractions began to get a little more intense, the couple took a steady walk to the hospital hand in hand, sharing their excitement that they would soon be meeting their new baby. At the hospital, the medical team Melanie and Doug had enlisted waited until Melanie's contractions got closer together before breaking her waters. They were confident it would be a straightforward birth and that the new arrival would be with them soon. The couple couldn't believe that their family was about to be complete, ready to give birth. Melanie lay on the hospital bed with Doug by her side. The couple smiled at each other lovingly as Melanie prepared herself for the birth. All her vital signs were normal, and the labor was progressing as it should. The medical team burst her waters and prepped for the arrival of the baby. Suddenly, Melanie began to complain that she felt dizzy and sick. A panicked look took hold of her face as her grip on Doug's hand loosened. She lost consciousness, and her heart rate and blood pressure dropped to 0. In a cruel twist, the baby's vital signs also dropped. Melanie was clinically dead. Moments ago, everything had been going to plan, and now the medical team face ID. The reality that Melanie had suddenly died with her unborn child still inside her, needing to act fast and save the child and attempt to resuscitate Melanie. Doctors decided to perform a life-saving emergency cesarean section. Doug couldn't believe what was happening. Minutes ago, he'd been at his wife's bedside holding her hand as they prepared to welcome their new child into the world. Now he was being told his wife was dead, and there was a possibility that this unborn child wouldn't survive either. He collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed with grief and emotion. There was only one thing he could think to do, and that was to pray for his wife and unborn child. As his wife was rushed off to the theater, he contacted family and friends and begged them to join him in his prayers. Family and friends all prayed for a miracle and took to social media to ask for the kindness of strangers to also say a prayer for Melanie and the child. The Pritchard story gained immediate attention on social media, and soon over 150,000 people from all over the world were saying prayers for the couple and offering support. Against all odds, a team of dedicated doctors managed to save the baby, while another team fought to revive Melanie. Nurses took the baby, a little girl, to Doug and asked them what her name was, Overwhelmed that his daughter had survived, he replied Gabriella. While it had been good news for baby Gabriella, Doug's still had to deal with the heartache of his wife's tragic situation. At this point, Melanie had been clinically dead for over 10 minutes. Despite 4 defibrillator shocks and relentless chest compressions, it would seem nothing could save Melanie. Doctors quickly realized that when they broke in Melanie's waters, amniotic fluid had escaped into her bloodstream, causing an amniotic fluid embolism that brought on her cardiac arrest. On top of this, in their desperation to save baby Gabriella, an artery had been severed, and now Melanie had internal bleeding. Doctors told Doug to prepare for the worst. By some miracle, doctor didn't give up hope. On another round of defibrillator shocks and chest compressions, they detected a weak heartbeat, even though it was a small glimmer of hope. Doctors told Doug that if Melanie did pull through, she would probably have neurological problems for the rest of her life as a result of lack of oxygen for more than 10 minutes. Melanie was now being kept alive by machines, and she required 2 blood transfusions and a transfer to another hospital. Complications from the emergency cesarean section meant she had to go through another surgery, which she may not survive. Her heart struggled to function at just 5% capacity. She was also hooked up to a ventilator, which was breathing for her. Doug entered his wife's hospital room, wishing to see her before the dangerous surgery she was about to undergo. He took in the scene before him and burst into tears. None of this had gone the way the couple had planned, and he was desperate for his wife to pull through and meet their daughter. For the second time in as many days, Doug dropped to his knees and a final plea to his unconscious wife. He held her hand and told her, "I love you. I will always love you. Our kids Brady and Gabriella are wonderful and love you. If you have any spark in you to fight, then fight, regardless of my hopes." The medical team had already done so much for Melanie, but they hadn't lost hope that she would pull through. In a desperate attempt to get Melanie through surgery, doctors showed her a picture of Gabriella. The sight stirred her, and she cried out, providing a glimmer of hope for Doug and the rest of the family. Against all odds, Melanie made it through the surgery. Doctors didn't want to get his hopes up too much, but this was just the news he needed to spur him on. A visit from the priest who had married Melanie and Doug years earlier gave even more hope. The priest reminded him, "That's what you said yes to in marriage, in joy and sorrow, in sickness and health." Just 24 hours after surgery, Melanie's condition improved. She began to breathe better and was taken off the ventilator. Shortly after, she regained consciousness. And to the surprise of the nurse in her room, Melanie asked to see her husband and child. Everyone was shocked at the recovery Melanie had made, and when nurses fetched baby Gabriella, the new mom was able to hold her child for the first time. Doug looked on in awe as tears filled his eyes, and getting to see his wife hold their daughter was exactly what he prayed for. He couldn't believe how brave his wife was and how the medical team had never stopped fighting for her. Melanie's recovery continued to stun the hospital staff, and she left the hospital just 6 days after the incident, something no one had thought possible. In the weeks that followed, Melanie made a full recovery with no complications. Surrounded by the love of her husband and children, she returned to the person she once was. In 2014, 4 years after the incident, Melanie felt ready to share her story with the world. In an article she wrote, she said, "There isn't a day that goes by that I don't thank the Lord for allowing me to survive something very few live to talk about. I thank God for allowing Doug Brady, Gabriella, and me to be a family again." Melanie went on to write a book about her experiences, expressing her gratitude for her family, for the prayers from strangers, and most of all, for doctors, nurses, and blood donors who gave her and her daughter the chance to be together. Melanie and Doug's touching story emphasizes the power of faith and medical intervention to bring about what no one thought was possible. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Melanie and Doug's incredible story. Their experience seems nothing short of a divine miracle, especially in how it brought safety to Melanie and her daughter. Please share your reflections in the comments below. What did you think?